Hi Hilda, this is Bev. I'm an ex-IELTS examiner. I'll be giving you some feedback on your tasks today. Okay, so your task was about democracy. Okay, first of all, in terms of your task response, you write off in the first paragraph, you need to be clear about what you feel, okay? You've gone straight on to China, whereas the question is talking about democracy throughout the world. So you need to have made that a generalized comment and then stated that you're going to be using China as an example. Okay. Okay. So you start off with, in recent years, democracy has always had its critics. Okay, that's a very nice opening line. It has often been associated with debt and dysfunction. I don't know if dysfunction is quite the right word. I think maybe a better word there would have been corruption. Yeah? As far as I am concerned is the phrase. Okay? Okay, and then you don't need that. There are two main challenges to democracy. Okay, because you're talking about the concept of democracy in general. Okay, so not necessarily specific countries. Okay, so the rise of China, you can say, for example, we'll look at China as an example. Okay, we'll look at how it has grown and look at the voters in China as well. Okay, good. Right, so then you go on to your first paragraph. Firstly, China's influence has grown. Okay, you need to maybe specify where you can say the international influence, okay? It can now or may now be considered an economic juggernaut, okay? Nice vocab. That has broken the democratic world's monopoly on economic progress, okay? Some Chinese elite, okay? No S, because elite is referring to a group already. Okay, so it's all the people that belong to the Chinese elite believe that this is because their model is tightly controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, coupled with a relentless effort to recruit talented people into its upper ranks. Full stop. Okay, the reason for this, or the reason for this is so that there can be more. So that it can be, the reason for this is so that it can lend itself towards more efficiency than is currently observed in democracies, and will then be less susceptible to gridlock. I'm not clear about what you mean by gridlock. I'm thinking maybe you're talking about stifling growth, economic progress. Okay, gridlock very often refers to a traffic jam, okay, where things cannot move. So it's not quite the right word here. Okay, then you go on to give an example. For example, Larry Summers of Harvard University has observed that when America was not growing fastest, you could say when America was at its economic peak, yeah, it had taken, because this is in the past, nearly 30 years, 30 should be a word, to double its citizens' living standards. Okay, full stop, new sentence. However, China has been doubling its citizens' living standards roughly every decade for the past 30 years. Okay, here where we've got China, you might want to go and have a look in your sentence guide for however, but on the other hand, a good way to use it. Okay, and this sentence therefore needs to have an E for spelling. Okay, so therefore with an E, comma, many people suspect, okay, because we're still talking about now, that democracy is going wrong. Okay, going wrong, you want to rather put is not functioning optimally or does not seem to be serving the citizens of countries where democracy is prevalent. You know, something like that. Okay, going wrong is very vague and very general and not up there with the level of vocabulary that you're trying to achieve in this essay. Okay, good. Let's go on to the next paragraph. The second challenge to democracy You can't. The challenge isn't directly to democracy, but you want to talk about the second challenge to the functioning or effectiveness of democracy. Comes from too much emphasis being placed on elections. Okay. This paragraph, Hilda, I find quite difficult to follow, and I think most readers would. So let's just look at it, how we could possibly make it a little clearer. Okay. Governments want to please their voters, that they may do whatever they wanted. Okay. Do you want to talk in general now? Okay, because then it mustn't go into the past tense. So for that sentence, governments tend to want to please their voters. Okay, or maybe what you want to say, governments tend to try to meet the needs of their citizens in order to stay elected. Okay, or governments tend to pander to the whims of their voters, I think is what you're trying to say. In other words, the voters are controlling the government, yeah? They tend to neglect long-term planning for their country by only fulfilling their citizens' short-term appetite or short-term needs. Okay? I wouldn't say so, I'd rather use the word thus, comma, many governments have, okay, because we're talking about something that started in the past, it's still continuing, so it's present perfect. So many governments have gotten into the habit of running big structural deficits as a matter of course. As a matter of course, and habit is very similar. So this sentence, I would change it a little bit and say, it has become common practice that governments, many democratic governments, operate on a deficit. Okay, you need to be more succinct there. For instance, comma, France and Italy have not balanced their budgets. I wouldn't say balance their budgets, because to balance your budget is to go and work on it. Doesn't necessarily mean it coming out with a perfect credit. Have not been able to operate in credit for more than 30 years, 30 in words, okay? The financial crisis, you need to say which financial crisis, okay, which year, the recent financial crisis or the recent financial global downturn, you need to be a bit more specific where and when this financial crisis is, has starkly, because we're still in a financial crisis, exposed the unsustainability of such debt-financed democracies, okay, because you're referring to France and Italy, okay. Thus, okay, so now you've used thus before, so here you can maybe use therefore. It can be argued that democracy is distemper. Distemper is the wrong word here. Distemper is the name that of a disease that animals get, okay, especially cats and dogs and horses, okay. So I think what you want to say is, thus it can be argued that democracy is, think of it, basically you want to say is totally dysfunctional, I think is what you want to say, okay. To conclude, although democracy, you say experienced, again, it's still ongoing. You can say, although democracy can experience a few setbacks, I believe that it is the best political system in the world. Okay? And you need to say a little bit more why, because of what it can achieve, okay? However, it requires appropriate checks and balances on the part of, okay, on the part of the elected government, okay, or the ruling government. Okay, so Hilda, you've answered the question, but you do need to make it a little bit more clear what your stance is in the beginning, okay? The other thing that I would look at is your grammar. You need to look at present perfect and past simple, the differences between that. Those are two tenses that many people find difficult to work with, so be very clear about how to use that. And you've used some nice vocabulary, but be sure that you use the vocabulary correctly. Okay, using a word like distemper here, which is totally inappropriate, you would lose marks for that, okay, because it shows that you don't understand the meaning of the word clearly. Okay, but overall, not a bad job. You would probably get a 6. I would say you'd probably get a 6 for this. If you improved your grammar and your vocabulary, you could get up to 6.5 or 7. Okay, so good job.